Well, there is an answer to everything. There's a reason why everything happens, except the first happening, or except the first. What can I say? How did everything get here? There's no answer to that. Well, there is an answer, and the answer is this. It is self-evident that if matter is indestructible and something can't come from nothing, the fact that everything is here is self-evident that it must have always been here. Now, when we look at things from a secondary concept, we see a beginning and end of everything. So it seems that why not a beginning and end of the first beginning? Right? We tend to think that, but that is a misconception. As I said in the first place, it's self-evident. The fact that we're here and matter's indestructible, and the fact is that to have a first cause, everything would have had to come out of nothing. Then you would say, how did it come out of nothing? How did that happen? And so on infinitum. It's the same with the religion. Right? Religion don't like the materialists and atheists because they say everything existed. But when you put it to them and say, what about your God? Oh no, he always existed. He didn't come out of nothing. Right? So they contradict themselves, don't they? So we have to, first of all, we've got to get our basics right. And as I see it, the basics is, whether we like it or not, everything must have always existed. That's the only possible answer. We have to accept that. Now, everything always existed, hard to comprehend, right? And the universe is, what can I say, evolving, combining, disintegrating and combining. Now, if the universe continued to get more and more complex, right, you say, well, if it had a simple beginning, right, how can you have a simple beginning? It must have started somewhere, right, to get so complex. So I can only say an answer to that is this. No matter how complex the universe is, or is in places, there's a limit to how complex it can get. Of course, if it kept increasing, it would infer a beginning. Well, it's like a Lego set. You can combine and combine and you can get all different combinations, right? But there must be a final answer, no matter how complicated it is, that it can't get any more complicated. Now that is hard to comprehend in the universe because there's so many matter particles, almost infinite in number, and it's hard to comprehend that that there was no first beginning, that it always existed, and it rotated. The universe rotates. It combines to its limit, then it disintegrates. It combines to its limit and it disintegrates. Now that, I'll admit, that's hard to comprehend, but it's harder to comprehend that it could all start from nothing, come out of nothing. Now, listen, you guys out there, don't start telling me that the answer is some God created it, because I'll say to you, well, who created your God? All right? What are you going to say? Oh, he always existed. Oh, well, you're just the same as what the materialist is. So let's pull the plug on the lock and admit that everything always existed, is combined to high complexity, disintegrates and combines and evolves and rotates forever and ever. And there is a limit to how complex those combinations can be. Because if there's no limit, right, and you get a higher and higher complexity, it infers the first beginning. Now, as a materialist and an atheist, that's a bit shaky for me, I'll admit. But the alternative is more shaky, because they come down to the same scenario. When they talk about their God creating everything, they come down to the same scenario. So we have to accept that, like it or not. And once we do that, and say, right, purely physical, inevitable acting universe with limits, can't go any further. Just rotating and combining infinitely. And there's infinite space and there's matter throughout. Now, we don't know, we can't get to the end of infinity, can we? But logically, how can you have an end of space? It must go on forever. And statistical probability, why wouldn't matter be right throughout? Why should it only be in one little thing? Right? And you might say, oh, why should it all go on forever? Right? So, the smartest people about us are in a quandary over it. Right? They're in a quandary. But to me, I've come to the final conclusion, we have to accept that it always existed, it's rotated in the stew pot, rotated forever, evolving and disintegrating, evolving forever and ever, with limited complexity. Now I have to admit that. Now I admit it's amazing to me, right? But most other things are not amazing to me. It's not amazing to me, the complexity of matter particles. It's logical, because they can combine like a Lego set to a high degree, almost infinite degree. Right? And we should expect high complexity. We should expect a human being to be what he is and robotic. There's no other way. And these matter particles, they have to act inevitably, because what isn't there out there, right, to direct it? Now, it seems as if there is some direction, because even if you build a computer, you can build self-correcting mechanisms in it. And it's almost like a robot, right? It's almost robotic. Well, it really is robotic. That's the only answer. And as lifelike as it may be, and we human beings, as magical as we may seem, if we could, we've only got limited sensory ability and knowledge, but if we had unlimited knowledge, we would know, we better trace every action of every particle in our body, and we would know that it was acted inevitably. And even when you change your mind, the electrical impulses in the brain would be inevitable. So the universe is full of illusionary effects, and this is the goal that progressive thinkers should be: overcoming illusions and getting down to reality. Now, I know it's boring, right? And we human beings, we like to have challenges, right? I go a bit funny sometimes when I go out dancing. I skylark a little bit, right? But it's silly behaviour, right? It's not really rational behaviour, is it? But sometimes when you're in a, what can I say, a rigid physical environment, the monotony, you have to do something to relieve the mental pressure. You have to do something silly sometimes, don't you? Right? To relieve it. Now that's probably a backward step, and it seems to me